Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting of February 8th. We all, since everybody is here remotely, we will be doing roll call votes. Under an executive order by the governor, all of our meetings have been allowed to be done remotely through Zoom, and we're still acting that way until he releases the health restrictions, which he put in place back in March. First, we will do our attendance. Denny?
I am here.
Josette?
Yes.
Andrew?
Here.
Allie?
Here.
Susan?
Here.
Steve?
Here.
Kathleen?
Here.
Jeff?
Yes. Here.
Lucy?
Here.
Mark Sullivan?
Here.
Lisa did not get in yet. Brian?
No, I'm here. I'm here.
Right there. Okay. Lisa's here. Okay. Brian?
We have 14.
Doug?
Here.
And myself. So we have 14 attendance. Okay.
Perfect attendance.
Yes. Alrighty. So, Jim, did you actually get a chance to record your presentation yet for your statement?
Budget message? Yes, it was. Luckily, I recorded it last Monday, and I believe Walpole Media got it up last Tuesday. So it's up and online, and I believe you all have. I think I sent out copies of the budget message as part of your weekending email.
Yeah, get the package. I was just curious if I could.
YouTube has it
online. Okay.
Yeah.
YouTube
So we tweeted it out, and Josette's right. YouTube does have it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just a couple quick questions real quick on your budget presentation, Jim.
Yep.
And I know we're going to touch these budgets later. So in the current budget, we had some police positions, and they are currently, 2 of those 3 are now filled.
No. What we did was we funded 2 police positions back in June for a half a year. I asked the police chief to hold off on filling them just because we didn't really know what was going to happen with state aid as far as the current fiscal year and next fiscal year. But since then, we've gotten a lot clearer picture from the state. So he's going to go forward and begin filling those. I think he might have a transfer in mind from another department, and so he's starting that. So what's being proposed in this budget is a full year worth of funding for those 2 positions and another position, which would be a new position that starts. I think I did it for 3/4 of the year.
Okay. Alrighty. And we're also going to be adding an additional firefighter, and we're finally going to get that additional inspector / day shift officer.
Yes.
Okay. Alrighty. Those were my key takeaways out of your budget message, that were things I knew we had talked about previously, and I just wanted to make sure I understood where they were going. Okay. We'll roll right into our agenda. Fiscal year 2022 budget.
Yes. So Mark and I briefly spoke before the meeting, and I'm going to try to keep it as consistent with what we've done in the past, which would be we'd run through the budget. We'll start with tonight we're supposed to cover general government, culture and recreation, health and human services, and debt. I have all the department heads. I believe everybody's online. If I can't answer a question, they're going to back me up. So if it's okay with everyone, we'll handle it the same way. I'll run through. I'll start with, for example, Charter Review Committee. I'll wait a second, pause to see if anybody has a hold. And if you could just identify yourself. So Mark, and I know Josette will write it down too, and myself. So if that works for everyone, we'll start. Mark, are you good?
Yes, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So
Jim,
Yep.
This is Mark Sullivan. I just want to ask a question so that I can cut down my number of holds. With the part-time positions, there's quite a bit of movement amongst the departments, and I'm just wondering, I know some of the part-time positions receive benefits. Are there any, with the moves that you're making, part-time positions now being moved into where they would receive benefits?
Mark, specifically, what part-time positions are you referring to?
Jim, it's just kind of more of a general question. Like the select board, I see that there's an increase in part-time. So I'm just wondering, are we adding any part-time positions that will also have benefits?
Off the top of my head, no. I can't think of any that would do that. The new positions that we're adding that will add benefits is, as Mark mentioned, the positions in the fire and the police department, and the 2 proposed positions in the Department of Public Works.
Right, yeah, no, I'm just interested in the part-time positions, not the full-time. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yep. Some of those part-time, excuse me, some of those part-times though are, they're part-time on one budget, part-time on the other budget, so they're actually a full-time person. So that might be some of the things you may have spotted too, is that it's the same person, but they're in 2 budgets, so they're, 40% here, 60% there, or half here, half there.
Sure, and specifically for administration, that's exactly what we did. We have someone who used to work in our department. Jody came and stole her from us, and with all this COVID, she's responsible for tracking all the COVID reimbursement funds and everything. So we were reimbursing that position through COVID for the extra hours, but I did want to budget for it because, quite honestly, I have no idea how long this COVID tracking and everything's going to go on. So that's more or less why we added those hours in there, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
So I'll start off with Charter Review Committee, $0. Town Moderator, $0. Bylaw Review Committee, $0. Select Board, total is $61,755.
Hold, Brian.
Okay, thank you. Administration, bottom line, $480, $892.
Hold,
Mark.
All
Brian.
right, so Brian and Mark, which, Mark Trudell or Mark Sullivan?
Mark Sullivan.
Thank you.
Okay. Finance Committee, $11,980. Reserve Fund, $460,000. Town Accountant, $255,998.
I have a question on that, but not on the dollar value, but on something else. So should I put a hold on it or?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay.
So Town Accountant.
Yep. Okay. Municipal office expenses, $69,400. Board of Assessors, bottom line, $327,436.
Hold, Stug.
Stug, yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Treasurer Collector, $504,805.
Hold, Doug.
Yep.
Okay. Legal Services, $220,000. Personnel Board, $2,800. Okay. Information Systems, $339,911. Town Clerk, $201,863.
Hold,
That was
Mark Sullivan.
Mark Sullivan, okay.
Thank you.
Can I put a hold on IT? I didn't get mute off. Yes, this is Doug.
Doug, sure.
Sure.
IT Doug.
Okay. Elections and registrars, $93,632. Okay. Conservation Commission, $92,545. Okay. Planning Board, $63,442.
Hold, Mark Sullivan.
Thank you.
Okay. Zoning Board of Appeals, $61,50.
Hold, Brian.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ponds Management Committee, $0. Community and Economic Development, $150,000, $882. Okay. Permanent Building Committee, $0. Building maintenance, I'm gonna skip over just because, we're gonna address that when Dawn comes in with the rest of DPW, unless anyone has a problem with that. Okay. Town report and annual audit, $52,800. Trust fund commission, $450. So a grand total of $5,760,299 in general government. So we'll go back and start from the top.
So select board was Brian.
Through you, Mark. Jim, I'm just curious, I see a drop in the professional budget, but then a pretty good uptick in the part-time permanent, and just wondering if you could explain that.
We just saw a drop there because, trying to think here. So you're going, we actually brought, sorry, I'm on administration, my bad. Sorry. Sorry, I just got confused. So what are you looking at, Brian, as far as the professional, the 21,150? We actually had someone retire and we brought someone at a lower rate of pay. The permanent part-time, 22,155. To be quite honest, our office gets hit up with a lot of different things. My office is more or less a catch-all. We're not bringing another person on. As I previously mentioned, we have Stacy who's helping out in the accountants department, and I also may need some type of part-time help in there. So I kept it pretty, actually it's going down just about $1,000 overall on the personnel side.
Thank you. I release my hold.
Sorry for my confusion, Brian, too. Next one, Mark and Brian both had a hold on admin.
Yep. Let's start with Mark. Go ahead, Brian.
Jim, I was just going to ask on professional service energy management, a $40,000. I think it's a consulting fee. Is that something that has to happen this year?
Absolutely.
Or is it just something?
Absolutely. It does. We're actually, the select board was recently spearheaded us into the Green Communities Initiative, and we got accepted. It's gonna open the town up to some grants, but we need someone to kind of coordinate those efforts. And so what we're doing is we're partnering with Norwood and Sharon. They already have a full-time position, and they've agreed to let Walpole participate as part of that. We just basically, it's the same thing we do with the veterans agent, where Medfield cuts us a check and we cover the OPEB. They're going to cover everything on this, and it's just more or less a bill each month that accounting will see.
Excellent. Thank you. I release my hold.
Mark, I had the same question. I released my hold.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Town accountant, Josette.
Jody, to Mark, this is just kind of a clarification. Does Jody need any more certification as she's taken on the new position she has, or is it only as the system requires it, number one? And number two, the Lisa who's taken over the treasurer collector, is she up to date with certifications, or is it a continuing situation for her?
Jody, I'll let you take that.
Okay, sure. So for the finance director, town accountant position, I am certified, as you know, certified governmental accountant.
Yeah.
We just have to maintain the education from year to year. And for Lisa, treasurer collector, she's certified in both, and it's the same situation as for the town accountant. So
Okay,
she attends educational classes every year, and that allows her to maintain her certification.
Okay, release my hold. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you.
If I can just follow up on a question, there's a $1,500 increase in travel for the town accountant that I'm wondering about.
Let me see, sorry.
Went from 500 to 2,000.
Jody, wasn't that for that Mass Municipal
Yes.
Certificate program that you wanted? Okay, you want to
Yes.
talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So there's a program, it's a 26-week program, and it's a program put on by MMA and also Suffolk. And I'm hoping to be able to apply for that and get accepted. And it's a 26-week program. So hopefully we'll still be doing Zoom, and I won't have to drive anywhere. Otherwise, you know, then I'm forced to.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Alrighty, on to Board of Assessors. Doug.
There's a note here under appraisal services about the new for 22. The town now is responsible for the valuation of utilities.
Cutting out.
I was just wondering if you could explain that a little bit.
Hi, I'm Dennis List, Director of Assessing. In the past, when we're talking about the utilities, they're called the 504s. That would be Eversource, Bay State Gas, and Verizon, I think. What had happened in the past is the Department of Revenue, Division of Local Services, they were responsible for putting the values on these properties because in most towns they lack the expertise to say what is Eversource worth. I think we have a value of like almost close to $70 million on the wires, the poles, and things like that. In the last year or two, there's been recent court cases deciding on how the valuation of these utilities are done. In the past, they were done on what they call a net book value, is that the utilities would say this is what they're worth. But a recent case in Boston said that they were being undervaluated, anywhere from 25 to 50%. So they put the onus on the towns now to do the valuations on these utilities. So we have to seek outside assistance in order to do these.
Okay, thank you.
May I tag on a question onto that, please?
Sure, just that.
Is this evaluation once every 3 years, once every 5 years, or is it an annual valuation?
An annual.
Annual, thank you.
Doug, you're all set in your hold? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. On to Treasurer Collector. Doug?
Hold on, I gotta flip pages here.
Yeah.
See, I had two questions here. I was wondering, under postage, there is a comment about there potentially having a discussion about sending out invoices twice a year rather than 4 times a year. And I wasn't sure how much that could possibly save. And my second question is about the advertising, where it talks about that you have to advertise the uncashed checks, and that it's a requirement. And I'm curious, if it hasn't been done before, why? And that's it.
Lisa, I'll let you take that.
Okay, so with the postage, I think we calculated a savings maybe close to $10,000. It's $5,000 every time we send out real estate and personal property. So if we only send it out twice a year, that's, you know, approximately $10,000. With the advertising for the unclaimed checks, they changed the law a couple of years ago, the Municipal Modernization Act, which required us to advertise. But the first thing we had to do is change the message on our vendor checks that said this check has to be cashed within a year. So we've had to wait that year. We just changed the message probably 6 months ago. So we've never advertised because we never had to. We weren't required by law to advertise the way we did column tailings. So we potentially, once the checks have been done for a year with this new message, then we can go to the new method of claiming uncashed or advertising uncashed checks. So it's a process. We're in the middle of starting the new process, which started with the message on the check, and then we would have to advertise any unclaimed checks. Does that make sense?
I'm sorry, I just dropped off, so I didn't hear the second. I got the first response. I didn't hear the one about the uncashed checks.
Okay, so there's a new process, Municipal Modernization Act, that tells us we can advertise unclaimed checks. But the first part of the process is we had to change the message on our vendor checks. It had to say void if not cashed within 1 year. We just changed that message, so it's going to take us a year of checks, so sending out checks with this message on. So by probably next fiscal year will be the first time we can advertise the unclaimed checks. And that's why it hasn't been done in the past.
On the,
Thank you.
on the postage savings, is that something the Board of Selectmen has to bless, switching to twice-a-year payments instead of quarterly payments?
Is Jim, I would think that's something, and I think in the past it's been a discussion, but Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not something that it's a big change, so it'd be something we'd have to work into.
We haven't discussed it in some time, but
Yeah.
maybe in Lisa's new role, she can approach the board and see if they're interested. So.
Yeah, I could just imagine the people saying, I now have to pay, you know, $5,000 twice a year instead of
No.
$500.
Oh, no, it wouldn't be that. They would just get 2 bills in one
okay.
mailing.
Oh, so okay. So you're just looking at the number of mailings. You're not actually changing the payment.
Right. Oh, no.
Okay. All right.
Excuse me, Mark, can I add a question to that?
Yes, you may.
Through you. Lisa, does the technology exist that residents could receive these bills via email to save on postage?
So if they sign up for using our Invoice Cloud method of payment, they can sign up for getting, their bill by email, and they can eliminate getting a bill. Most people don't, and by law, we're supposed to send it to the owner of record, but anybody who pays their bill online can opt out of receiving a bill.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Doug, do you release your hold on treasurer collector?
Yes, I released the hold.
I actually have a request to go back to Board of Assessors real quick. Ally?
Susan.
Oh, sorry, Susan. I thought it said Ally.
I know, because it shows Alice, that's my real first name. I apologize for going backwards, but on Board of Assessors, I'm curious about the fact that the Director of Assessing is on an employment contract. I was not aware of that, and I'm wondering why there's a contract for that position. And I'd also be curious to know how many employment contracts we have now throughout the town.
Well, I'll speak to the employment contracts, and then if Dennis wants to add anything. So right now, we have employment contracts with DPW director, the town administrator, finance director. Who else do we have it with? Obviously, the Board of Assessor, the director of appraising, and who am I missing?
Chiefs.
Both chiefs. And I'm sorry,
Building.
Susan.
Building.
Oh yeah, building commissioner. Yep. I think that's it. So I think that covers it. So of those, which the Board of Assessors decided to give the town appraiser a contract just recently, talked to Labor Council about it. It's allowed under law, and they decided to do it.
So I just want to understand why we depart from the personnel board's salary scales and go to personal contracts. What triggers that? And who in the town has oversight over that decision in these cases? I just want to understand the system.
It's allowed by law. Who oversees it, with the exception of the Board of Assessors, the Board of Selectmen are the ones who enter into the contract agreements with those individuals. And I meant to add the IT director. That one is new also. So the board oversees it. And quite honestly, Susan, these people, not that anybody else is less important, but these are very important positions. It's important to me to ensure that the stability in these positions, and that these people are locked up for some time. give you an example. Right now, the town of Norwood is advertising the finance director position for $175,000. These aren't easy positions to fill. The IT director, he came to me with the request. I ran it by the Board of Selectmen. They were in favor of it. They pretty much follow the same boilerplate that we've had in place going back to the Michael Boynton days. So nothing much as far as contract language substantially has really changed over the years.
So how does the personnel board interface with this process, or is it just taken completely away from personnel board and it's up to the Board of Selectmen?
They have not been involved in the process.
The personnel board?
Yes. We've let them know that a few years back and I have a feeling I know where this is coming from, when there was some people on the personnel board, they asked me to get a legal opinion, can this be done? And it can be, and Susan, I have no problem sharing that legal opinion. I just got to dig it up, honestly.
Okay, I think it would be, I'd like to see it. I'm just, again, I was on personnel board a couple of decades ago. And these are changes, and I'd like to understand what triggers an employment contract for some positions and not others, and what the interplay is between the Board of Selectmen and the personnel board. That'd be great if you get me that memo.
Sure, thanks.
Jim, are those contracts also available to the general public to review?
They're on file with the town clerk and the finance director.
Okay, so there's nothing being hidden in a personnel file, just like you can go in and say, what's the salary schedule? You can go in and says, what's the town administrator's contract? What's this person's contract? And you can view the information.
Yes.
Okay, ready.
We just don't want to have a Methuen.
That wouldn't happen.
Thank you.
Okay. Alrighty. So let's see. We did treasurer collector, information systems. Doug.
Thank you. I just had a question about the town administrator adjustment for $2,000. It didn't look like there was a note with that, so I wasn't sure what.
That was part of Susan's timing was perfect on this one. That was part of his agreement there. I think his overall salary went from like 114 to 116.
Okay. Thank you very much. Release the hold.
Thank you.
Town clerk, Mark.
Oh, my question was in regards to the 5,000 increase in books and periodicals.
Liz, are you on this call? I thought I saw you here.
Yes, I am. Yep.
You want to address that one? I believe that one is that the books and periodicals. I'm sorry. That was that was started back in the Ron Fusile days, where he started preserving some of those books. We cut that last year to help deal with the COVID budget. So we added almost all of it back in there. Before that she was at $6,100.
So that's the preservation of records, basically. Those old books that we had. Okay. You satisfied?
Okay, I'm fine. I release my hold.
Okay. Planning board, Mark.
My comments to the planning board aren't related to the budget, so I'm going to release my hold and I'll bring it up at a later time.
Okay, thank you. Zoning Board of Appeals, Ryan.
Yes, through you, Mark. Just curious, the part-time permanent budget seems to have doubled, and just wondering what that is.
More or less coverage. I'm concerned with we have Ashley is, she's pursuing, I believe, her law degree, and she's somewhat resigned from the position. I've kept her on part-time to get us through with all the zoning, the 40Bs before the zoning board. But I wanted that extra 4,000 in there in case we need it for additional secretarial coverage, or there's so many unknowns with that board. They've been so quiet consistently. So that's the reason it's gone up that much. 2,000 to 4,000.
So you're basically looking to supplement that position with existing part-timers in the office that just pick up an hour or 2 hours a week to cover.
If necessary.
Okay. All set, Brian?
Yes, I release my hold. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. We skip DPW for a later date. And that completes our holds on general government. Ready? Any other concerns on general government? Where we didn't do DPW, I'm not going to take a vote on general government because we have a loose item. But are there any other questions or concerns anybody wants to bring up while we still have those department heads here?
I have an overall question. As you're looking over the budget and stuff, are you aware of anyone that is with townwide that will be retiring that's going to require a payout?
No, I'm not. I was trying to think if there's anyone in the fire, but I believe those payouts are going to be made in this fiscal year. So, no, not at this time.
Thank you.
That could change. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on from general government to culture and recreation.
Sure.
I did not tag those pages, I think.
Which one is that?
It's after the general DPW section.
Section 9 in the big book.
Okay, so it starts with Walpole Public Library and goes into recreation, goes into parks and historic town celebrations.
Okay.
So starting off, and I saw Sal on here, and I saw Debbie McElhaney too, the chair of that board. So if you're going off of this sheet, it starts on page 28.
28, thank you.
Okay, so Walpole Public Library, total requested is $869,092. Any holds?
Hold. Andrew.
Andrew, and who else besides Andrew?
Kathleen.
Kathleen, okay.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, recreation, 246,222. Okay. Parks Department, we'll get to Parks when we cover DPW if everybody's okay with that. So moving on to Historical Commission, that's 0. Town Celebrations, that's $2,000. And Trail Committee is $650.
Alrighty. So we are back to Walpole Public Libraries. We'll start with Andrew.
Hi. I just want to start by thanking Sal and the entire library staff. I think they've done a tremendous job during the pandemic. So my question is about the part-time permanent line item that seemed to have dipped down in 2020, then was up again for 2021. But then as I'm digging into the details here, I see, excuse me, not part-time temporary, I got lost, professional. Under the professional line item, there is a children's programmer position that says date of hire July 1st, 2022. And I assume, does that mean July 1st, 2021? Or is that really 18 months from now that you're going to hire a children's programmer?
The plan originally was to hire in 2021, but because of the COVID budget, we kept the position in, we just didn't fund it. So we're hoping to do something sooner, but we don't have any plans for now. There's no money in the budget to hire that position.
Okay, and then just to go back earlier in the professional line items, you are hiring a library clerk. It says date of hire 1/4/2020. I assume that just means this month. It says a replacement for D. Kirby, who retired. Did that already happen?
It did not. That position was put on hold. The governor reduced the percentage of people who could come into the library because we're doing it by volume. And so the decision was made to put the position on hold until those numbers came back up. So it's currently an open position in our budget right now.
I see. Okay, great. I mean, my only thought is, I understand limiting so is the logic that we're gonna limit new hires when people can't access the library as they normally would because of COVID? That's
Correct.
the logic of the, okay.
We have less people in, so we need, right now, less people. We can afford to keep the position open.
Sure. No, that makes sense. But for the children's programmer, I know you said you'd like to have done it this year, but it's being moved to next year. But my hope, and again, I could be totally wrong, is that as vaccine deployment ramps up, you know, kids and capacity limits could be changed, kids could be in libraries more, and I feel like that was such a demonstrated need for a children's programmer. I just wish that, you know, even if a person is hired a few months before kids can come back into the library at the same level, they could use that to ramp up programming. It's just a conversation to have, because I think it's a sore need.
And I agree. We do need the position. We do want the position funded. We are taking the opportunity right now to look at our staff. We have a couple of people who've indicated that they're retiring this year, and we have one person who actually has given notice just recently. So we have an opportunity to look at the budgets more closely, but I haven't had a chance to crunch numbers or to talk to anyone, not even my trustees, about this yet. So I understand where you're coming from, and I do want to fill that position. If we can do it within the current budget constraints that we have for this fiscal year and next fiscal year, we will try to fill it. But I understand that I can't be asking for more money at this time. So I have to kind of work the numbers through and find out what's going on there.
Thank you, Sal.
No problem.
Kathleen?
For you, Mark, just whoever style. I was looking more at the expenses. I saw that the personnel went down, but the expenses went up quite a bit. And I understand that there's probably a logical reason for this, but it almost is an opportunity for you to talk about what you're doing differently now in this age. So.
Sure. The big difference in the expense that you're probably seeing is that the books and periodicals went up by about $13,000. Before COVID, our budget was $93,000. Then COVID hit, and we budgeted for less for this fiscal year. We have a requirement to purchase a certain amount of materials through the MBLC. It is 13% of our municipal budget. So, but the MBLC last fiscal year and this fiscal year has waived that requirement. We're not sure if they will waive that requirement in next fiscal year. So we had the money put back in because our requirement as it stands with this budget that's before you would be just under $113,000. So even at this number, we're not fully funded for books and materials, but we had the money put back in.
Okay, thanks. I release my hold.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Mark, I think Ally's.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Ally.
I just want to kind of piggyback on Andrew and voicing my concern that that position for a children's programmer was delayed for another year. I'm hoping in the terms of retirements and things, the money will be made available. I think now more than ever, children in our communities are suffering. Their social, emotional, their development, their exploratory ages, it's the most important time. And with COVID, families have, hopefully kept their circles small and been home. And I'm hoping this summer, I think it would be really important to have that position ready to go and implement some new programming, whether it be outside, social distancing, with creativity. I think it is really important to put that on the top of the list for the library budget.
I agree. And I will do whatever I can within this budget to make that happen.
Thank you.
Actually, I don't think we had any other holds.
That's it.
That's correct. Okay, yeah. And since the Parks Department is going to be with DPW, we will also hold on voting culture and recreation at this point. Okay. Thank you, department heads who have presented tonight. And now we are on to, we got Health and Human Services still. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so that one starts on page 26. It starts with the Board of Health, Council on Aging, Veteran Services, and that's it. So I'll start with Board of Health, and I know Melissa, I saw her on here before, so I know she's on here. Board of Health, total recommended is $349,188.
Hold, Brian.
Mark Sullivan. Okay.
All right, Brian and Mark.
Yeah.
And Doug.
And Doug. Okay.
Brian, Doug, and Mark.
Council on Aging, 326,468. And Veteran Services, 163,542.
I have a question on that, so I'll put a hold on it.
Okay.
Hold as well, Brian.
Brian and Josette. Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
So Board of Health.
Board of Health. We'll start with Brian.
Through you, Mark, just a quick clarification, just the gas diesel fuel, significant increase, just some clarification on that. And then also on the office supplies line.
From Melissa, do you want to take that?
Yeah, of course. So as for the gas and diesel fuel, pre-COVID, I was not taking the town car home. And then when COVID began, and there was difficulty potentially roaming from place to place, it was advised that I took the town vehicle home. So that is the increase for the gas and diesel fuel. And then the increase for the office supplies. So we have 3 cell phone lines in the health department. I have a phone line. My deputy health agent has a phone line, as well as our public health nurse. We were able to get emergency preparedness funding that would cover 2 of those lines. So there is a line item in the office supplies that covers our public health nurse's phone, which would be $631.80. And then the additional $649.80 is for a 3G tablet that is for our public health nurse, that is pretty much utilized around the clock, obviously with contact tracing. So something that's a huge necessity right now. So that is the increase in the office supply line item.
Thank you. I release my hold.
Okay. Mark Sullivan.
If you could just give me an explanation with regards to the salaries. It increases, but there's significant increase with professional, the secretarial drops, and I just like to understand what's going on there.
Sure, I'll take the lead and then Melissa just back me up. The secretarial, we had a longtime employee who retired there, so we brought someone in, obviously at a lower rate of pay. The professional, quite honestly, and I'm glad you held this budget because I think they've been doing a heck of a job in the Board of Health with Trish, Melissa, Enrica, and Jen, the new secretarial position in there. And so those extra hours, originally when we hired our town nurse, it was a part-time position. I think it was 19 hours a week. We were very lucky because we hired her right before COVID hit. And not every town around here has a nurse, but she quickly became full-time. We were able to fund that through the COVID relief funds because that's allowed to, that's one of the exceptions that are for reimbursement. But you know, having this position, we've realized the value in having our own in-house person. I think it also has to do with the person who's in that position. She's excellent. I think tomorrow, no, is it tomorrow or today is our first clinic at the COA?
Tomorrow.
Yeah. They've been doing the vaccinations for our first responders. They did the league school last week. And really, it's just more or less to have the added coverage there. It also leaves about an extra 5 or 10 hours a week in case we need some overage. There's so much uncertainty in the next year or so. I just thought it was a good call. Melissa, anything to add?
No, I think that's spot on. So obviously, the difference with Jen being the new staff assistant, and the main thing is right now, any overtime hours accrued by our public health nurse has been able to be billed to COVID. But obviously, out of the abundance of caution, we don't know how long these funds are going to last. And obviously, we know the worth of our public health nurse. So we want to make sure that we have that in case we did need to bill for extra hours.
So my understanding is that Walpole is able to administer the COVID-19?
Yes.
Correct.
So you're administering to some of the groups that are now qualified. As they broaden the ability, like pretty soon, over 65, under 65, will Walpole be administering its own vaccine program, or would those people be expected to go to the larger vaccination?
No, so Mark, we start clinics tomorrow. We'll hold those steady until, there's to be no more public clinics, but we will be doing every Tuesdays and Thursdays. We have 2 clinics each day. One is from 9 to 11:30. The other one is from 2 to 4:30. And they do mirror the rollout of the state phases. So like you mentioned, right now we're in phase 1 and those 75 and older. As we progress to the next phase, all those eligible would be able to attend clinic directly here in Walpole.
And you're getting the vaccines from the state?
We are, correct. It's a very limited supply. Unfortunately, that's kind of the holding back right now. But right now we're receiving a limited supply on a weekly basis through the state. And then we'll hold the clinic based off of that. So it's week to week how many we can actually vaccinate.
Okay, thank you.
Real quick question on the vaccinations. When you get to the 65s, the next tier after that is supposed to be school teachers. Is that going to be provided to school teachers that reside or work in Walpole or both?
So we've actually, the clinic that we have now on Tuesdays, we've opened it up to those in phase 1 as well as those 75 and older, and we've opened it up to Walpole residents as well as those employed in Walpole, because we feel like that covers the, the group that we want to make sure that we are advocating for.
Okay. So are the teachers in the current group now they can start signing up, or are they still?
They're on the next tier. So it's a 65 plus, and then the tier after that. We did that. We were able to vaccinate our school nurses though.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. Doug.
I was just curious on the vaccinations. There's a comment that you anticipate future years being profitable. So I wasn't sure how we kind of profit on administering these vaccines.
So that's actually for the flu vaccine,
okay.
A little different from the COVID. So the flu vaccine, prior to our public health nurse now, who currently is in place, we used to go through Walgreens and Rite Aid to get the flu vaccine. So we were never able to bill an administration fee for this. Where now that we have it in-house, thanks to our public health nurse, we're able to administer it on our own with the help of our school nurses, our MRC medical professionals, and then we can actually bill for it. So obviously this first year was kind of a startup year, but I do anticipate it being profitable in years to come.
Thank you. Release the hold.
Mark, did you release your hold?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah. Okay. Nothing on Council on Aging. Josette with Veteran Services.
Yes, I'm not necessarily having a question with the budget, other than the fact that what you have down for the professional, would that be his starting pay, or does it that he or she, or would that depend on what type of resume they have? And
It all depends, Josette, and I didn't mean to cut you off.
No problem.
So we've advertised a position, as you may or may not know. John Cogan decided to retire back in December, and we advertised a position. We actually did. We've done a couple of interviews over the last couple of weeks, and quite honestly, this is an important position, and I want to be comfortable with the person that we choose, and I want to be selective. I don't want to just settle for someone. So we're still looking. I've actually reached out to Foxborough in Norwood. And ask them, we're having trouble filling this job. What do your veterans agent do? And they're interested in potentially pursuing a regional veterans position, and I have to formally discuss that with the board. So this is very much up in the air. This number could change. I like the idea of the regional position, but I also want to be mindful that our veterans in Walpole are getting the services that they need. So that really needs to be hashed out. In the meantime, we're going to continue to look for someone, but just so far, we haven't found that person. I have reached out to the Veterans Committee, asked them. I've reached out to some of the police officers and firefighters who are retired veterans to see if they knew anyone. I even reached out to Phil Mackey. So it's, if you know of someone who you think is qualified, let us know, but I just don't want to settle for someone.
I'm glad you're that selective. My other follow-up on that is the program that was in force until the retirement. Would that be the same concept between Medfield and Walpole that potentially might happen?
Medfield, I've already talked to the town administrator of Medfield. She very much wants to stay as part of, we're a little region right now, we're Walpole and Medfield. So they'd very much like to continue to work with us.
Okay, thank you for clarification.
And just, Mark, I know Council on Aging wasn't held, but I see Carrie here, and I just want to give her a plug in all the great work they're doing over there. Her and her team have been awesome. Carrie and Debbie have picked up when John left. They've helped process a lot of the paperwork for the VSO, and I'm really appreciative of the services that they continue to provide over there.
Thank you, Carrie.
It definitely has been a team effort.
Yeah. If that's it, before we go off of these budgets.
Brian also had a hold on veterans.
Sorry.
Brian?
Oh, similar to Josette, not really a budget thing, but I just want to make sure with this position vacated currently, that our veterans are not losing out, that they are being taken care of these few months, that there's not somebody in this position.
No, so Carrie has been assisting, Carrie and the assistant director, Debbie, have been helping out with this. Where they can't help out, they reach out to the Veterans Affairs offices in Boston. And I think she's reached out to Norwood a couple times too. So our veterans are being serviced for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Carrie.
Okay, Jim, you were saying?
So before we get these department heads off of here, I just want to, I would make a note. I just have a quick request about solid waste and recycling budget. Since we have Melissa on here, that falls in DPW, and I just would like to kind of go over it with you folks now, if you're comfortable with that. I'm not looking for a vote tonight. I just wanted to kind of let you know where we're at. I know there were some rumors out there. So a quick update on solid waste and recycling. The request is $2,233,633. The FY budgeted number is just over $2.1 million. So we're requesting an increase there. We have about a year and a half left on the current contract. We are exploring options. One of those options at this time is definitely not fees for trash or anything. The select board have not indicated that's something that they want to pursue, and Melissa and I aren't even considering it at this time unless we're directed to do so by the board. So this request would carry us through the last year of the contract. Recently, Russell sold. They were our trash collector for the last 3.5 years. They sold to Boston Carting Services. Boston Carting Services has reached out and asked, we'd like to do an extension on your contract. Are you interested? And Melissa and I have told them, yeah, give us a proposal. We'll consider it, certainly. But I also know that there's been talk about in the future about doing the what Norwood does, which is the truck that comes by and you only need one person to operate it. So everything's kind of on the table. I just more or less wanted to let you guys know that that's where our budget request is at, and we still have this will be our last year of that. We based our numbers off of, basically we took our worst number. I crunched the numbers, Melissa crunched the numbers, and we based it off of our worst month last year. Because with COVID, as you might expect, people were throwing out a lot more in March and April. Usually December is our busiest month after Christmas, but they were throwing out a lot more than they ever were throwing in the December, January time period. So Melissa, anything to add?
No, I think that's 100% accurate. So we're definitely seeing an increase in numbers. Like Jim referenced, we were able to get a grant through the health department. So we're working closely with a representative from DEP. So we will, work through all our options and go from there.
Does anybody have any questions, I guess?
Yes.
Allie's first, and then Josette.
Hi, Jim. You know how this trash disposal is a big topic for me, and I really hope to see this increase again. Is disappointing, but I understand because people are home. 2 weeks ago, I attended the webinar through the Board of Health and the Recycling Committee with a representative of the Mass DEP, and it was sad to see our town is in red, and as we know with red coded maps, it's not a good thing. The amount of trash we have per household is enormous, and she referred to our trash system as an all-you-can-eat buffet. That it's not necessarily a good thing to have an all-you-can-eat buffet because people take advantage of it. I'd like us to see to move forward in this next contract of something a little different than what we're doing. Not trash for fees completely, a complete switch, but I definitely would like to see it go in a different direction and that line budget hopefully start to decrease. My 2 cents, sorry.
Me too.
Josette?
It's worth a nickel, Allie, any day. My question has to do with the recycles also, about the potential. And Melissa and I have spoken about this, of with the next contract, to go to the 2 barrels, one for trash and one for recycles, and everything go in there as opposed to the buckets. So we no longer have all sorts of plastic waste blowing down the streets with the wind and such. And the barrels are easy enough to use. 95-year-old people can maneuver them. I know in the past, Robin put a lot of effort into going through this and getting the information, and it kind of just dropped. But I hope there's a more concentrated effort going forward. I don't know what the cost effect may be as far as the supply of these barrels, whether or not there is a grant to directly address that. But considering the time element that we have open, it's not like this decision has to be made within the month as we've been put in the position previously. So if we could kind of be a little bit open on what the needs potentially could be. Thank you.
Sure. Did I see another hand pop up? Yes, Susan.
So my question is really general, and it's just about recycling. Melissa, can you just help me understand the state we're in? I don't mean necessarily Walpole, but I keep hearing conflicting information that we're recycling things that really end up in the landfill, and we can't get rid of our recycled products. And where are we with recycling, and what do you think? Where are we headed with it?
I know a lot of people have that question: are my items that I'm recycling, are they actually being recycled? So they are being recycled. Obviously, there's a different percentage of contamination. So I think a huge part is really educating our residents, because I think a lot of people, and Allie was on the call that she referenced with DEP, Kathy Mirza, a lot of people are like wishful recyclers and are recycling things that they think it's recyclable, but it's not. Or potentially it's a recyclable, but it's contaminated. So I think getting back to the basics, your bottles, your cans, not doing the new, recyclable materials, because there is no worth at the end of the day for those. It's mainly going back to basics and really reeling in what you're recycling. So I think that's something that we can focus on in the health department, is also just making sure that everyone's educated and properly educated on what should be recycled and what shouldn't be recycled.
What do you think is the best way to have that education? Is it something on our TV channel? Is it something in the newspaper?
So I know in the past, Robin had done some work with Walpole Cable. So something like that is a really good way to go at it. Obviously, our kids are you know, a wealth of knowledge, and they're the ones that are that leading edge now that are coming up. So I know in the past when Russell was in business, they would sometimes do educational pieces in the school. So I think a multi-prong approach, possibly like a newspaper article for those that might not have internet access, just trying to get it added, but also have the same message so everyone's receiving the same message and that it's accurate. I know Nancy from our recycling committee does a really good job. Walpole Recycles, it's a Facebook page. She puts a lot of great information up there, and I know a lot of people share that. So just making that resource well known. Another good resource is Recycle Smart MA, which anyone can go on and has access to. And it's literally a recyclopedia, they call it. So you can type in any item under the sun that you can think of. You type it in and it will tell you whether it's recyclable or whether it's not. And if it's not, what's the resource you should use to properly dispose of it. So that's also another great resource that some don't know about. Obviously, another resource is we do our annual mailer. So that's another good platform to put information on that would possibly help recyclers. I know it's very confusing because I think back, you know, years back it was recycle everything, and now we're trying to like reel it back in to like get back to basics, recycle the basics, make sure it's clean, because if it's not clean, then it's not going to be recycled.
Well, thank you for that information. I'm smiling at your term wishful recycling, because I have a relative who recycles things that even I know belong in the trash, but people want to do it, but I think more information would be helpful for all of us. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Other questions on solid waste and recycling? Alrighty.
I appreciate you letting us talk about it today. So thanks, Melissa.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Actually, we can vote Health and Human Services, right, Jim?
Yeah.
Okay.
So bottom line, Health and Human Services was $839,198.
Okay.
Motion for favorable action.
By Denny.
Second.
Seconded by Josette. Josette Colding, quick. Okay. Alrighty. And Josette. We will do our roll call vote. Starting with Denny.
Yes.
Josette.
Yes.
Andrew.
Yes.
Allie.
Yes.
Susan.
Yes.
Steve.
Yes.
Kathleen.
Yes.
Jeff.
Abstain.
Abstain. Lucy.
Yes.
Mark.
Yes.
Lisa.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Doug.
Yes.
And myself is a yes. 13-01 with Jeff abstaining. Ready?
Jeff's got a very nice wife.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
She's the best.
She is.
Alrighty. Debt and interest budget.
Yes. So let me just skip to that.
Where is that, Jim?
Okay, that's on page 32,
32.
right after culture and recreation. So the debt and the retirement of debt budget is just that. Doesn't have anything else in it. So the total on this one is 4.187,900, 4,187,900. So I guess it's the only budget. I'll give it a quick intro, and Jody, please jump in afterwards. We're looking to keep it pretty level funded on this one. If you read my budget message or you sit through it, I did talk a little bit about the debt and interest budget. We're going to realize some significant savings on the Fields project because we didn't go out to borrow last year back in, I think it was April or May. The market was just really uncertain. And on Friday, we got the borrowing call from the bond rating company. I'm hoping they're going to have our numbers out by, I think he said February, I think next week or middle of this week or something, prior to February vacation. So I think we were projecting, 4.25. They told us yesterday it's probably going to be in the 1s or 2s, he thought. So that's a really good thing. Jody's kind of taken a different approach to this budget than Marilyn has in the past, which is fine. She really dissected the whole thing and figured out, could we stretch out some payments and do things a little bit differently? And that's more or less why it's level funded. And Jody, do you want to add anything?
No, just that we're going out to borrow for the fields, the Route 1A fields, the emergency generators, and 3 years worth of road repair. So it's just over 4.9 million, I think, that we're going to borrow. So we'll see 2 interest payments in FY22 and 1 principal payment. So that's what makes up the estimated amount. And again, it looks like the interest rates are coming in lower than what we had budgeted.
It's fantastic.
So Kathleen's hand come up. Kathleen?
I just was applauding their approach because it's fairly significant savings.
Yep, thank you.
Are we changing the duration of any of our bans, or are we still going on 3 years with the band borrowing?
That was what I was going to ask.
So the bans, it's the life of the ban is not always 3 years. It can be, Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, it depends on the item that you're banning.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, it's not based on a dollar amount that you're borrowing. It's based on what you're actually borrowing for.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. 'Cause I know we were doing bans on the road repairs, and they were $200,000 a year. And they're cycling out every 3 years, so I wasn't sure if we were looking to push those road repairs to a 5-year banding, or if we were just like looking at just other options.
Well, at this point, this is going to bring us to the bonding. And then, I'm assuming at fall town meeting, we'll go out more road repair, and that we'll have to see what else is going out, whether we decide to ban or bond.
Okay.
Jody, a question on the bans. Is there not exclusionary things that it will not cover? Specifically like land or whatever? Or am I getting it confused with something else?
I don't, Lisa, do you know?
Well, each ban has its own purpose, and so its own purpose is its own length of time that you can borrow for. So I'm not sure when you're talking about the bans, each ban is handled differently in terms of how long we can borrow for.
All right, so
Does that make sense?
It's independent per issue as opposed to a broad brush for everything.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
I think the other side of the question was, is there something that is totally excludable that you can't do a ban for? And I think one of the items
I thought there was.
You can't purchase land on a ban, I don't believe. But is there anything else that's restricted?
I'd have to find out for you.
Yeah. So there's actually a Mass General law that would give us the information of what's restricted and what isn't.
Okay.
I think it's chapter 44 or something like that. But we can get back to you on that. We can circle back, like they say now in the
The daily briefings.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
Very good one. Circle back.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, and you got your 70,000 in as a placeholder, right, Jim?
75,000, yes.
Yeah.
Is that the placeholder 75? Oh, for facilities, yeah, but it was the borrowing cost, the cost of actual borrowing. In other words, paying the
fees.
Okay.
Yep.
Alrighty. Okay. Alrighty. Other questions on debt and interest?
Want a motion?
Sure, I'll take a motion.
Motion for favorable action for debt and interest of $4,187,900.
Okay.
Second.
That was Susan?
Yep.
Okay. Just making my notes. Okay. Alrighty. Denny?
Yes.
Josette?
Yes.
Andrew?
Yes.
Allie?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Lucy,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
and myself, yes. 1400 for debt and interest.
Thank you.
Yep.
So Mark, I know that's it for tonight, but I just wanted to quickly go over a couple of things with you folks. I don't know if you've had a chance to look over the information I sent you on Friday, but if anybody has any questions, Steve, I think you're really the only new person. So if you want to talk offline at all, just feel free to call me, or we can set up a Zoom or something, whatever you're comfortable with if you want to talk. And I know, so later on this week, we're set to discuss the DPW budgets. Rick and the superintendents will be on the call and be able to address any questions that might come up. The next meeting is Thursday, February 18th, and Jeff reached out and reminded me that is February vacation. So it's your call. You were supposed to go over the personnel board articles in the Walpole Media budget, Walpole Media Corp budget. I'm not sure if Tamara has worked with Gene Kinney to put together that budget yet, but in personnel board, quite honestly, they're going to come before you and talk about they're recommending a 1 3/4% increase for the living adjustment, and they're changing the personnel bylaws to add Juneteenth as a holiday, which is a state recognized holiday, went into effect this past summer. So I think that's really it. But if you want to push it off, we totally can. I'm bringing that up now just so we can plan and let the chair of that committee know, and Julie Lowry, the vice chair. So what do you want to do?
Anybody have objections to meeting for the 18th? I mean, it sounds like a short agenda. If people are going to be away, they can still Zoom in.
Yeah.
So any concerns about holding it on the 18th, or do we want to move?
Take a vote.
I request a move. Good.
Do I need a roll call vote on this one, Jim, or can I just go by a show of hands?
Show of hands, I guess that's easy.
Show of hands?
Then I'll just know one way or another.
Holding the meeting on the 18th by a show of hands? I see 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12. Okay. Wanting to move it? 2. Okay. All right. So we will hold the meeting on the 18th. Once again, it's a small budget. If those who are not able to attend can get us questions in advance, we can have them researched and get you the answers emailed before the meeting, and you can send your concerns back to Jim and myself, and we'll make sure they get presented to everybody else. Alrighty.
And I think pretty much all the other dates are okay. I know usually with the school department, there's some juggling around there, but Bridget and I spoke before, and I based the dates we chose off of my discussion with her and the Nancy, the chairperson. So I think pretty much that's it for me.
Okay.
Hey, Jim, or Mark, quick question.
Yes, go ahead, Denny.
Just, we have I see in the warrants, we have the solar overlay and the stadium parking back on that were removed from the fall. Are we expecting those to go through this year, or is there?
I do. So I'll give you a couple of talking points for that stuff. So I'll just start with, we have a citizen petition for the single-use plastic bags. That's Article 16. I believe it's a recent Walpole graduate is sponsoring that or something. I haven't met the person, Aoife has, but that person will come in. The South Walpole parking, I believe they have everything they need. They got the maps, they got the abutters list, so I think we're good to go with that. They did everything that the planning board asked them to do. The solar overlay, again, they did everything that the planning board asked them to do. They submitted 2 separate articles on that one for a zoning overlay, and then 2 to authorize the select board to enter into a pilot agreement for the zoning solar overlay, sorry. And then a citizen's petition from Richard Pila. I think it's similar to the way it was worded back in the spring, which is to withdraw the town from the Norfolk County retirement system. So Those are the 5 citizens petitions that are sponsored. As far as the zoning overlay, the good news is they ended up hiring Phil Mackey. So they have someone local. They have someone, he's the sponsor of the article, which really helps because last time they were running around getting signatures because the person who owns Harwood Engineering no longer lives in Walpole. So I think it'll go a lot smoother this time around.
Excellent.
I had Josette and then Ally.
Jim, when we went through this Article 20 previously, did we get a response from our town attorney on the viability of the article?
We did have something, we had a lot from Lauren on that because he had sponsored 2 other articles. I have to go back and I know she gave us a lot on the other 2 articles. I think she gave us some, but not a whole lot on the last one because it also had OPEB in it too. He's worded it differently this time around. So I will.
Excuse me, is it possible prior to dealing with that we could have possibly the week ahead of time what the town attorney's opinion is before it comes before us?
Sure. And I'll also reach out to Norfolk County and see what the repercussions may be.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, his previous article, the town attorney basically said that it was non-actionable because it had conflicting information. One would be a 2/3 vote, one would be a regular vote, and it's 2 entirely different topics. And the way it was presented was not something that you could physically take up as an actionable item. Yeah.
And where this is worded differently, we need to know exactly where the town stands prior to us having any discussion over it, I feel.
Yeah. Hey, Jim, does he have an alternative of where to move our retirement plan to in the article?
Yeah.
To the state.
To
the Mass State Pension System.
That's the way he worded it.
That's the way it's worded here.
Okay.
I'd like to know if he's providing this information. I'd like to know, what's the rate of return we're getting with Norfolk versus what's the state doing? I know the state does very well. What are the costs associated with each one? And then the other thing is, as Jim mentioned, repercussions from Norfolk. And then also, I'd like to know, is Norfolk, remember they told us roughly about 2030, we should be fully paid in? And we're going to then use that money to go to OPEB. Are they still on track to do that? Because I really, to me, that's kind of like boilerplate information we need to have to be able to evaluate whether we're spending any time talking with them about this or not.
Good question.
So, Mark, I'm writing this down. Rate of return for Norfolk in the state, cost associated with the transition. Are they still on track to be fully funded by 2030, whatever? Anything else?
And does the state even let you join?
Okay.
Yeah.
and the other thing too was depending on what you decided to do with the state, you were still on the hook to administer the plan. So you had to handle all the correspondence with the participants, giving them the statements and so forth. And I believe Norfolk handles that all for us as part of the package. So you're basically looking at a layer of responsibility the town now has to absorb in distributing benefit information to all of the people in the plan, retired or currently employed, and doing the paperwork side. So
added expenses.
Yeah, so I think that was part of the other problem, was that, the state gives you great returns, but is that extra 5%, you're going to eat it up by hiring somebody to basically be 100% dedicated to administering the plan internally for you, or hiring some professional outside the town to do it. So,
really good questions. If we have answers for them, we can have a much more intelligent conversation with him.
Excellent. I totally agree with you, Josette. And if anyone else has any other questions, just get them to me ahead of time, because I do want to. It's easier for me to have the questions for you folks before questions and answers before the meeting. So.
Okay.
Mark Sullivan, I think you also said penalties to leave Norfolk County. Was that another?
Yeah, that would be another question. I guess the other concern I have is I don't want the town of Walpole the administration to have to spend, a great deal of time, energy, and effort researching all, dotting the I's and crossing the T's on this. I'd like to know, like, there's 3 or 4 basic questions that I think would tell us as a committee, yes, it's worth looking into this further, or no, it isn't. And I don't remember getting that when he came up, with his presentation. His presentation, if I remember correctly, seemed to be, gee, here's an idea we ought to look into, and left it there at the doorstep. Well, yeah, we could, but I don't know if it's worth it for the town to expend all that time and energy pursuing it. And I'm wondering if we push back on him a bit to say, get us some information, or we may have to get it ourselves. I don't know, but I don't want to spend a lot of time on it unless we know the basic parameters of, yes, it may be economically worth even looking into.
Yeah, he had very little substance to it when he came forth. So I feel where it's the second time around and the feeling is mutual, I'm sure with all of you. We just want to be better prepared so we know exactly where we stand prior to having the conversation. Thank you. Susan, I don't know if Mark can see you or not. Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with everything that's been said, including getting answers to a lot of these questions up front. But I also feel like on each of these citizens petitions, it's up to the proponent to argue to us and then to town meeting why this is a good idea. I mean, I don't think a citizen's petition gets dropped in our lap and then we have to run around doing investigative work. So if this is a great idea, tell us why and back it up with facts and figures and information so that we can evaluate it properly. And if the proponent can't do that, I think that, makes our job a lot easier. But I don't see where somebody throws an idea out there and then we all have to get to work on it. It's such a great idea. Like this plastic bag thing, I think is awesome. And I'm assuming the proponent who comes in will have information and facts and data and an argument for why this is a good thing for us to do. I think that applies to all of these.
Any other questions for Jim or anything on our schedule? Ally?
I had 2 quick things. Jim, are we expecting a sub-budget for education prior to that meeting?
Yes. Mike Frischer usually puts that together, and as soon as I get it, I'll get it to you folks.
Okay. And then the second thing, I quickly looked over the articles for town meeting. Are there any articles, or as the meetings for the various boards start to plan, that we need their input on really prior to our vote? I found at town meeting last spring, it was very frustrating that some boards did not have public hearings and things of that nature in a timely manner that we could have their input prior to our vote, and then it created quite a chaos.
The only one I can think of is the planning board for those the parking in South Walpole in the zoning overlay. So they've received it with plenty of time. Aoife sent it over a couple of weeks ago. So I know Kate Delaney was advertising, and she had a couple of questions because the wording is so long, but she was moving forward with advertising that. So I'm hoping that's not going to be an issue.
Yeah, I would just like to keep kind of tabs on that as we move forward, and if we end up shuffling meetings around. So I think it's really important that we get the input from the other boards first.
Yeah, actually, Ally, thanks for bringing that up. So just to bring this up for the committee, I had a real issue with, the fall meeting, the way that happened. We're the finance committee. We're supposed to be given all this information to evaluate something, have a vote, and make a recommendation. And so, leaving the whole inclusive housing issue by itself, we received information, we made a vote based on that. And then the Thursday before the meeting, the town meeting, the planning board has a meeting. And, I actually watched both the planning board meeting and the town meeting over again over the weekend. And, I felt like we got manipulated, that we received this information, we made a vote, and then 2 nights before, boom, comes this meeting, and it was pretty clear to me that the planning board was not in favor of it. You know, and votes and people's opinions were manipulated. So I show up at the meeting, the town meeting on the football field, and everyone's like, well, gee, the planning board brought this up, brought that up, and yet they never brought their issues up before the finance committee, and we're the ones that are supposed to kind of advise the town meeting what we think. And so what I'm wondering is, you know, as a committee, do we have the authorization to, you know, ask the planning board to meet on these critical items like the solar or the parking beforehand, so that when we review it to give our recommendation to the town meeting members, we have their comments in advance and we don't get them after we have our meeting?
You're 100% right.
Mark, I can say that there's a timeline laid out by the state law on this one. You guys can totally invite the chair and the vice chair in if you'd like, to talk about this before and see what happens.
Okay, I want to be clear. I'm not making any accusations about people or boards or committees. We get along with all the boards and committees, and I don't mean to cause this as an issue, but I just really was disturbed that this meeting was held on a Thursday after, you know, right before the meeting, and the finance committee had not been given the information by the planning board as to what their thoughts and concerns were before we were able to have an informed vote for the town meeting members.
In addition to, we didn't have the opportunity to have a meeting to get all this added information that was forthcoming, so that we had a balanced sides for the article. And it was very frustrating going through it. And I think it behooves us as a board to be more aware of what is coming up on the agenda. So if you know far enough ahead, that we can notify Kate, their secretary, if we so want to have the representation from their board at our meeting.
Okay.
Mark, through you, I agree with what you said. One way to finesse this, if you will, is looking at our schedule to send a memo to the planning board saying we are considering Article 17 on this date, Articles 18, 19 on this date, and we're requesting that you conduct your hearings in a timely manner prior to that, or if you're not going to have a hearing prior to that, that you attend the meetings on those dates, so the chair and the vice chair, so that we can have a discussion with you about these issues. I think sometimes you know, we have to let them know what we need and not just assume we're going to get what we need from them. So I think that's a way to kind of force the issue and
Finesse.
Inappropriate.
As you said. Good job, Susan.
Alrighty. There being no other business before us tonight, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Moved by Denny, seconded by Josette. Okay, Denny, yes.
yes.
Josette,
Yes, and Mark, would you send me the email address that you want me to
yes, I will.
resend to everyone? Thank you.
Andrew,
Yeah.
Yes.
Ally,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Kathleen,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Lucy,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
and myself. 14:00. We stand adjourned until Thursday night. Thank you, everyone.
Night.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.